Jesus said, I have come that you might have life in all of its fullness. And if we're honest, we know that for the majority of people in our nation, let alone the world, life is anything but lived to all of its fullness. Lives are scarred by poverty and illness. The things that we take for granted are not accessible to all people. And life is, for so many, a daily round of struggle and pain. Jesus said, behold, I've come to make all things new. He said of us, his followers, that our light must shine before all people. He also said every tree is known by the fruit that it bears. Every mouth speaks what is in the heart. And yet, if we're honest, we know that life is anything but lived in a new way, in a radical, different way within the life of those who follow Jesus. The church and individual Christians oftentimes don't shine a living, joyful hope. We've become mere reflections not of Christ, but of the world around us. You can tell that by the fruit that we have borne, by the language that we have used, and by the ease at which we use words to harm one another. The world seems hooked on leaving relationships and building walls, and in the church we have mirrored that. The divisions between individual churches within our circuit and within all the circuits in Methodism, within the relationships between our church and other denominations, prove that. Jesus said, this is what I command you, love one another. By this all people will know that you are mine, if you love one another. You don't need to be an expert theologian or a grand historian to know that the last centuries have not been lived in that way at all. The nations of this world are seemingly constantly at war with one another, if not with weapons and bombs, with words. The two nations at the heart of both the great wars of the last century were Christian nations predominantly. And today in the United Kingdom and the United States, two nations I know best, we have demonstrated on a large, ugly canvas just how little we love one another. Those who are like us from the same places and towns and cities, who we disagree with, we talk down at, we shout at, we disparage and we call names. Let alone those on the other side of a Mexican border or the English Channel. It's time for us to rediscover that actually, if we're going to live out the calling Jesus gave us, we can't do it with thoughts and prayers and acts of silence. If we're to do it at all, we have to rediscover our voice. Where there is violence and discrimination, we have to speak out. Where there is racism and abuse of other people, be they women or LGBT plus people or minorities or people of other faiths, we as Christians should be first speaking out. Whether it's a politician or a prime minister or a president doing the disparaging, we should be brave enough to speak out. Endlessly in the church in my lifetime, I'm 55 now, I feel like I'm well over halfway through my life. I've heard one message over and over again. We don't talk about religion and politics. The two never mix. And so for generations, we have stopped any involvement in those two arenas mixing. And what a mess the world is in. We need to relearn what Jesus must have known. That silence is not golden. That following him meant picking up our cross and walking. It meant speaking about truth and acting wisely. In the life of the church, we never struggle to raise our voices about things that trouble us and that are close to us. If I walked into your church, or any presbyter did, and said, I think we should change these pews and fit chairs, or take out the pipe organ, or have predominantly worship led by guitars and a worship band, there'd be noise. If the local council decided to change the way our rubbish is collected, or how our recycling was collected, there would be noise. We have no difficulty getting excited and aroused if our favourite TV programme is changed. Do you remember the outcry when the Great British Bake Off moved from BBC to Channel 4? I'm convinced that Jesus would have us regain our voice and speak out. To be agents of change, challenging the way our societies are run. Speaking truth to power. Making sure always, something that as Christians we seem so poor at, that our words don't harm others. Sometimes we speak in such a way as if we can say whatever we like to one another. It doesn't matter if we hurt or belittle each other. That is simply not true. To conclude, I want to read to you a prayer of St. Francis that's in our hymn books. I've made it plural, not singular. Lord, make us instruments of your peace. Where there's hatred, let us bring love. Where there's injury, your pardon. Where there's doubt, faith. Where there's despair, hope. Where there's darkness, light. And where there's sadness, ever joy. But not by thoughts and prayers. Not by golden silence, which really never was golden. But by words and action and living out the gospel imperative that Jesus has laid down before us. Follow me, is what he said. So let's stop being silent and let's follow and speak. For the glory of God, I pray.